its crackdown on illegal immigrant truck drivers following a series of awful.
U.S. Border Patrol is monitoring millions of American drivers nationwide.
In fact, the percentage of long-haul truckers who become murderers is small.
President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social.
At 4:19 in the morning, on a frozen stretch of Highway 52 in southern Minnesota, a semi-truck bearing the logo of a well-known regional carrier eased onto the shoulder. The road was nearly empty, locked in the unnatural silence that only comes when temperatures plunge below 30 degrees. To anyone passing by, it looked like a routine winter safety inspection, the kind meant to keep icy highways from turning deadly. There were no sirens, no urgency. The driver pulled over calmly, air brakes hissing into the darkness. On the surface, nothing was unusual, and that changed the moment the inspection began. The trooper noticed inconsistencies almost immediately. The electronic logs didn't align with the declared cargo. The weight distribution across the axles was wrong. When inspectors drilled into the trailer's sidewall, they didn't strike insulation. They broke through into a concealed compartment running the full length of the chassis. Inside were vacuum-sealed bricks of cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl stacked with industrial precision. At first, officers believed they had intercepted a lone smuggler. They were mistaken. The driver didn't demand a lawyer. He asked for a deal. And within an hour, the information he provided transformed a roadside stop into a national security emergency. Yet he wasn't acting alone. He was part of a ghost fleet, a coordinated group of 83 drivers operating from inside one of the Midwest's most trusted trucking companies. They used identical modified trailers, ran fixed routes through 5 states.
The news does not stop on this holiday week. I'm Aisha Hasni, and we are tracking those federal agents arresting more than 100 illegal aliens during that sweep, and it targeted truck companies in California.
Blended seamlessly into legitimate commerce. What was uncovered on Highway 52 wasn't just a drug seizure. It was the exposure of a parallel logistics network that had turned America's supply chain into a weapon. To understand how such an operation could exist, investigators had to look beyond the truck and focus on the name printed on its doors, Northstar Hauling. For years, Northstar was considered a pillar of the regional economy, transporting consumer goods, industrial materials, and heating supplies across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, South Dakota, and Illinois. Their trucks were everywhere, but the investigation revealed that Northstar wasn't a single company. It was 2 operating under one brand. Federal agents identified a specific subset of employees, 83 drivers, primarily Somali nationals, who followed rules entirely different from the rest of the workforce. While regular drivers adapted routes based on demand, weather, and fuel costs, these men followed rigid, unchanging paths. They drove the same corridors, stopped at the same terminals, and operated almost exclusively at night. Their genius wasn't secrecy, it was camouflage. They hid in plain sight, driving branded trucks alongside innocent co-workers. Military analysts call this parallel logistics, using legitimate infrastructure to mask illicit movement. The drugs were only half the operation. Financial investigators uncovered a laundering system that stunned regulators. Northstar wasn't just moving freight, it was moving money.
Customs and Border Protection told us, the parent agency for Border Patrol, is that they use this technology to help identify threats and disrupt criminal networks, and that they are governed by federal law.
Ownership was traced to shell entities with no legitimate purpose. Funds avoided traditional banks, flowing instead through informal, unlicensed transfer system. Over 3 years, more than $85 million quietly exited the United States in fragmented payments disguised as family remittances. Individually, they raised no alarms. Together, they formed a river of illicit cash flowing into East Africa and the Middle East. Even more disturbing, the network exploited the environment itself. Analysts found that activity spiked during the harshest winter months. Snowstorms and extreme cold forced law enforcement to focus on accidents and public safety. Roadside inspections dropped because officers couldn't safely remain outside for long periods. The cartel had turned Minnesota's winter into a strategic advantage, moving its largest shipments when oversight was weakest. By the time federal agencies connected the drivers, the modified trailers, the offshore money, and the winter timing, they understood that a gradual response would fail. Arresting one driver would collapse nothing. The decision came from the highest levels of the Department of Justice and Homeland Security. Take them all at once. The operation was named Northern Breaker. Across 5 states, SWAT teams, FBI agents, and ICE units mobilized. Freight terminals in Chicago, warehouses in Minneapolis, and transfer hubs in Sioux Falls were surrounded. The objective was absolute containment. Secure the fleet, freeze the money, arrest every member of the ghost operation simultaneously.
But according to the FBI, there are likely hundreds of homicidal truck drivers on our roads who have never been caught.
Many of them have driven across Nevada and have left a bloody trail behind them tonight.
As another winter storm swept across the Midwest, agents waited. The storm wasn't an obstacle, it was confirmation. The Ghost Fleet was fully active. Dozens of trucks were on the road, pushing shipments north and south under cover of snow. At 2 a.m., the command center issued the green light. On Interstate 94, a convoy of Northstar trucks fought through whiteout conditions, mistaking the flashing lights behind them for snowplows. They were wrong. Patrol cruisers and unmarked federal SUVs boxed them in, forcing the rigs onto the frozen shoulder. Drivers were pulled from their cabs, zip-tied against the ice, radios useless. There was no negotiation. At the same time, the main assault hit Northstar's Minneapolis headquarters. An armored Bearcat smashed through the perimeter fence as FBI SWAT teams poured into the loading bays. Inside, agents found 2 dispatch systems running side by side. One tracked a legitimate freight, the other, encrypted and restricted, tracked the Ghost Fleet in real time.
To some, they may think, well, this is pretty innocent. They made some money off tobacco. It's not innocent. It's organized crime.
It was the nerve center of a criminal enterprise hiding inside a legal one. In Bay 4, agents uncovered the engineering heart of the operation. Hydraulic false walls capable of concealing half a ton of contraband, narcotics wrapped to defeat K9 units, vacuum-sealed cash, and finally crates of weapon components, rifle parts, magazines, suppressors. The network wasn't just importing drugs, it was exporting violence.
But according to the FBI, there are likely hundreds of homicidal truck drivers on our roads who have never been caught.
By dawn, all 83 targeted drivers were in custody. Dispatchers were detained, mechanics were arrested mid-modification, Northstar hauling ceased to exist before sunrise. The fallout was immediate, supply chains fractured, fuel deliveries stalled, food shipments froze in place. The chaos revealed how deeply the cartel had embedded itself into the regional economy. As forensic accountants examined seized servers, they realized the $85 million figure was conservative. The Ghost Fleet was the financial engine of a much larger laundering scheme. Shell companies layered profits before funneling them through the Hala system, making recovery nearly impossible once the money left US soil. This wasn't just a drug ring, it was a foreign-linked influence operation exploiting American infrastructure. Operation Northern Breaker became a wake-up call. National security doesn't begin at borders or airports, it begins on highways, in warehouses, and during routine inspections on frozen roads. The cartel had weaponized commerce climate and complacency, but no camouflage is perfect. The truth leaves tracks even in snow, and when agencies act together, there is nowhere left to hide. But the story didn't end with the arrests or the frozen trucks sitting under federal tape. In the weeks that followed Operation Northern Breaker, investigators began uncovering just how close this network had come to reshaping the Midwest permanently. Interviews with detained drivers revealed that Northstar's Ghost Fleet was only one regional cell. Similar routing patterns were flagged in neighboring states, using different company names but identical trailer modification. What Minnesota exposed was not an isolated crime, but a scalable blueprint. Federal analysts mapped years of shipment data against overdose statistics and violent crime reports. The overlap was impossible to ignore. Counties serviced by Northstar's fixed winter routes showed spikes in synthetic opioid deaths precisely during months of peak snowfall. Entire communities had been unknowingly supplied through a system designed to exploit weather, trust, and routine. The trucks didn't just deliver contraband, they delivered dependency, violence, and silence. The political shockwaves were immediate. Congressional hearings were convened behind closed doors. Transportation regulators admitted that oversight models were outdated, built for safety compliance, not counterintelligence. How could a fleet move millions of dollars through informal networks without triggering alarms? How could identical trucks run identical routes for years without scrutiny? The answer was uncomfortable.